Super glad that you are here and hope everyone is ready to be inspired and to learn from our great presenters. Tonight's presentation is being brought to you by the Porto Center for Learning and Leadership. My name is Maureen Ashby, and I'm the director of the center, and I am joined by Carmen Chiappetta, who is our outreach coordinator. The Center for Learning and Leadership was established within Porto Charities in order to bring all of the organization's education initiatives together. The work being done within the center structure includes the annual grants for schools, teacher and leadership development, and educational outreach. As many of you well know, Porto's longstanding mission has been to support within the Diocese of Arlington Catholic education and employment initiatives which serve those with disabilities and to foster engagement with the general community with events and experiences for peoples of all abilities. This series will be led by two presenters. Sophie Rolo will be our main presenter this evening, and Maura Locke will continue our learning in next week's session. Maura is here with us this evening. Maura, I don't know if you want to just jump on and just say hello so everybody knows who you are.
Hi, everybody. I will be presenting next Tuesday evening, following up to the amazing Sophie, and I'm really looking forward to this evening's presentation to really experience and to understand, dyslexia from the student perspective. So it's great. We're looking forward to it.
Sophie is a graduate of Bishop O'Connell High School and currently attends James Madison University. Sophie herself has a dyslexia diagnosis, and she will share with you her journey in successfully navigating her own challenges and how she continues to grow her advocacy for both herself and others in the academic setting. Sophie came highly recommended to us as a presenter by Dr. Joe Vorbach, the superintendent of Catholic schools in the Diocese of Arlington. And for this event, she has expanded a presentation she first developed while at O'Connell. And at this point, I am happy to turn everything over to Sophie.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being given this opportunity to share my story. I believe that dyslexia is, well, it is truly a common thing that people do struggle with throughout life, and it's very rarely talked about. So, with that, let me share my screen. Okay, so dyslexia, the lived experience and the science behind it. So, first to start off, I want to have you guys actually experience a little glimpse into how it is to be dyslexic. So, I would like you guys to grab a piece of paper and a writing utensil, and I'll give you guys like maybe a few seconds to grab that. Okay. So once you have your writing utensil and your piece of paper, I want you to take your writing utensil and put it into your non-dominant hand. After that, I will read a short phrase and I need you to write it down. I want you to write it in your cleanest handwriting possible, and I will only repeat this phrase once. So, good luck to you new dyslexics. Okay, I'm going to be reading out the phrase right now. The quick fox jumped over the dog. Okay, stop. What happened? Did you have to over-concentrate on formulating your letters? Did you have a slower writing time? Were the phrases being read out too fast before you could fully finish writing down what you were listening to? Were you feeling a little frustrated, stressed, maybe a little overwhelmed? Well, this is a little glimpse into how it is being dyslexic, and especially being a dyslexic student. So, I would like to start off with the myths and truths about dyslexia. Anytime someone finds out that I'm dyslexic, they always ask me one of these every single time without fail. So, The first one that I hear a lot is a student can outgrow dyslexia. This is not true. Dyslexia is not something to be cured of, to grow out of. It is simply just a difference in how the brain functions. So there's nothing really to change about the brain over time. The next one is dyslexics read and write backwards. I bet some of you out there who have heard about dyslexia have heard this misconception. Um, Not true. It's a very common myth. It just makes reading and writing significantly harder. Yeah, no, I cannot read and write backwards. That's just not something I can do. The next one is more boys have dyslexia than girls. This one, when I was doing my research, this one got me. More boys are likely to get diagnosed with dyslexia, while girls in the classroom, their struggles are not as paid attention to. Many girls are told that they need to work harder or that they just are lazy or they're not paying attention enough to school or are actually not focused on as much. Um, I know we're in the 21st century, but there is still some sexism, some bias towards girls versus guys in the classroom setting. So then the next one, dyslexics read better in a mirror. No, no. I've had a teacher recommend this to me. I have tried it. It does not help. It's a lot more confusing. This phenomenon came about, or this conception came about because dyslexics typically flip their letters. Um, and just because we might flip a B and D versus a P and Q, or does not mean that we can do that just reading and writing backwards again. The next one that is very common when I was growing up. If a dyslexic student reads for 20 minutes every day, their reading will improve. Not quite. It will help with students' understanding and familiarity and practice with their reading, but it won't help their dyslexic symptoms specifically. Sorry to all your parents who use that to get their kids to read, but yes, practicing does help, but does not help with dyslexic symptoms. The next one is every child that struggles with reading is dyslexic. This is not true. You might have some students who are both equally struggling, but if you give it maybe some time, one of the students might be completely fine after maybe a year or two, and maybe it just takes longer for them to pick up some skills, while the other student is truly dyslexic and their struggle continues. The last one is dyslexia is an eyesight issue and it's not a visible disability in any way. Um, Dyslexia is not an eyesight issue. I know I'm wearing glasses, but this is more for just general like reading. But I have 20/20 vision. I can see perfectly fine. It's not about not being able to see. It's just, again, about how the brain processes information and how it is a difference in how it processes. And also, dyslexia can be seen on an MRI. There are many papers and studies on dyslexia that they include their MRI imaging of students when they have them go through an MRI and maybe read something, and they can actually see the parts of the brain fire up. So, with that, I want to talk about dyslexia and brain anatomy. I am a huge nerd for understanding the reason why something is the way it is, and I would love to share that with you guys. So, there are three areas of the brain that are specifically used. So, all these three areas produce the ability to read, write, and speak. So, we have the Broca, we have the Wernicke, and we have the visual cortex. So first, I'm going to talk about the visual cortex and translating visual stimulus. So First, when you want to read, you look at a word that you want to read. So you see the word. Next, this goes through the optic processing. So your stimulus, it'll be intaken by the eye. It will travel through the optic nerve where it converts the light into electrical signals to pass through the neurons in your brain. Then it spends some time in the LGN and it makes sense of those electrical signals and processes the information further. Then it will send it off to the visual cortex to recognize what you are trying to read. Lastly, this information will move to different parts of the brain for further processing. But for a dyslexic student, these pathways to the visual cortex are not as efficient, and the area itself is also not as efficient of those who are neurotypical, meaning the standard. Um, and this results in a individual who has dyslexia not being able to recognize words as well as their peers who are neurotypical. So let's say you're reading a word for the first time. You have no idea what this word is, and you say, I want to read it. So you choose your word. You then separate it. The brain will isolate each letter. All of this is subconsciously. Next, the brain will relate each phenom to the letters. So for the first letter, we have the sound D, the next one, A, and the last one, G. Phenomes is just the relationship between a letter and the sound that it makes or we associate with it. After, the brain will put each phenom together to create your word, dog. This process is repeated over and over and over again in your brain, and soon your brain might easily remember it after a certain point, after you see a word for maybe the fifth time or so. But the dyslexic effect, so let's say you have a neurotypical student. They see the word the for the first time. And it takes a while for them to kind of process it, learn it, remember it. Okay, cool. Now they got it. The next time they see the word, they might get it even quicker. And then maybe by the third time, they'll know it almost instantaneously. For a dyslexic student, though, they see the word the, they struggle, they try to figure out what it is, and then, okay, we got it now. Except the next time, it takes the same amount of effort to process it again. And then the third time, it might be like that again. For me, I always describe it as meeting someone again and again and again, but never able to fully remember who they are. So now we have the vernacle, and this is where speech is processed. So the vernacle is the part of your brain that deals with word comprehension and the understanding of word meanings. And putting those together is where your ability to retain what you read, your comprehension, and understanding what it truly means. But for a dyslexic student, that area is not functioning as efficiently as it should again. And this results in a lacking of understanding what words mean and weakening of their comprehension skills. I I personally don't suffer much from this, but I do have like friends who can read something 5 or 6 times and still not be able to tell you what they just read. Next, we have the Broca. This is where speech is formulated. So for the Broca, this is where this part of the brain orchestrates all the muscles that are needed for speech. So if you really think about it, your tongue, your lips, your neck, they're all used in tandem to formulate the speech that you are giving out. And if you really think about it, let's say TH, for example, your tongue has to press against your teeth Your mouth has to come open a bit, and your neck is also used a little bit. With this, the dyslexic effect is that area again is not functioning as efficiently as it should, and it results in a dyslexic student's in a struggle more so to formulate spoken words and most likely have a speech impediment. I have tons of dyslexic friends who have a speech impediment, and I never understood the correlation until I did further research, but this is a key indication that a child might have dyslexia because of their speech impediment. Again, it is not direct correlation, but there is some relationship between these two. So, the areas of the brain, these three that I just previously talked about, in a dyslexic individual, they are not used as efficiently as neurotypical individuals, and this results in struggles in reading, writing, speaking. So, what the brain does to attempt to help itself in these struggles. So, if you first look at the neurotypical brain, the input is only moving on the left side of the brain only, while the dyslexic student, it's moving from the back of the left to the front of the right to the front of the left. And this movement is how the brain compensates for its shortcomings and its struggle. But for stimulus to move hemispheres on the brain, it actually takes a longer time. And talking about neurology, a longer time usually means a few seconds. And so that few seconds means a world of a difference for a student in school. So, how can teachers help? Empathy. This is a really big one that I want to emphasize the most. If a student asks for help and maybe their grades are doing completely fine, and you, as a teacher, don't believe that you should or need to put in that energy to answer their questions. This just makes, from a personal standpoint, that I've actually experienced, it's a very demoralizing and isolating feeling. I took a honors physics class and my grades were good. Um, but I was struggling with some concepts and I needed some extra help. And first, my teacher saw that I was dyslexic, but then also saw that my grades were doing fine. And I went up to him after school and I said, "Hey, I need some help. I'm struggling with this concept." And he looked at me and just said, "You're doing just fine." And he kicked me out of his classroom. It takes a lot of courage to ask for help. Um, Probably for all of you neurotypical people, it might be a common thing that, let me just ask for help. But growing up with a learning disability, asking for help is one of the scariest things you can do because you are showing, in some ways, weakness. Like, it's a very vulnerable point to say, "Hey, I need some help." Next, read over accommodations. It doesn't have to be in depth. I would honestly recommend that once you get your roster, if you just scan over and see, okay, this student, this student, this student, they have accommodations, and just make a mental note of it, but maybe have it somewhere where you can find their accommodations maybe more readily available for you. So when the student comes up to you and asks, "Hey, I want to use my accommodations," you know what accommodations they need to use, as well as how you can help them and that they legitimately have their accommodations. I've been faced many times with asking for my accommodations and teachers simply being like, "You don't have any accommodations." And it's like, "Yes, I do. I have them. Um, they are documented and you have them." And then they take a few minutes and look up on their computer and they're like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, you do. Okay." And if we could maybe not have that happen, um, that would, as a student, that just makes a world of a difference again. Just feeling seen and not almost gaslit into believing you don't need your accommodations. Then listen to your students. If your student says, "Hey, I need some help," just say, what can I do?" Um, if a typical study method for your student doesn't work for them and they get the courage to say, "Hey, this isn't working for me. Do you know any other ways to study?" Be open and maybe do a little digging, and just a general Google search can help you kind of see what other study strategies there might be. Um, I personally have asked teachers, "Hey, this is not really working for me. I don't know how else to study. Like, do you have any recommendations for this course specifically?" Because as a teacher, you know what you're testing on and you know how you want the knowledge to be processed. So as a student, I always see the best bet for me to learn and study and help remember and retain this information is to go to my teachers. Next, how can parents help? Again, empathy. I understand it might be frustrating to try to figure out what's happening with your kid, and you might not have a history with of people in your family having a learning disability, or friends who might not, who friends kids who don't, but it's no one's fault that your kid has a learning difference. It is a journey to learn, and although we're in the 21st century, there's still a lot of things unknown and not utilized by schools. Um, Next one, love. Just be there for your kid. Help them any way that you can. It means so much more. It means a world of a difference to your kid just being there for them. I know it for me on the days that I call my parents from college saying I am so stressed out. I don't know how my classmates are doing like they're getting B's and A's and all of this and that in the classes, and they don't study. And I'm here struggling and working my butt off to just get a mediocre grade. And it's frustrating. And just having my parents be on the other line, on the other side of the phone, and just saying, "I know you got this. I believe in you. Take a deep breath. We're here for you. Let's talk this through." It means so much to me. Last one, listen to your child. Um, School has changed over the years. Classes are more involved and also larger. Workloads are heavier, and there's more pressure for kids in school. And I have talked to some parents when they approach me about um, their their kids struggling in school, and they're like, "Well, back in my day, school wasn't like this." I understand, but school has changed a lot. And parents also need to adapt with that change and maybe understand and realize that it has changed. And there's a lot more that goes into it and supporting your students from a 21st century standpoint. So, after you guys have now learned what dyslexia is, how the brain works, and a little bit of background knowledge, I want to introduce you guys to my dyslexia. So, dyslexia is a broad branch term for these learning differences. And so, yes, people are dyslexic, but they have specific types of dyslexia. I am dysthetic dyslexic. I have a lot of difficulty in learning, decoding, and spelling of words. Um, a lot of the words that I struggle with are the sight words, the words that you can't sound out in any way. The, brought, would, sorry, all of those words are very difficult to retain for myself. I also have a lot of difficulty in word tracking. So on a page with a lot of words, um, my brain won't be able to stay on one line. It will actually jump almost maybe two, three, 4 lines. And when you're reading your class information, textbooks, books in general, a few lines can actually make a difference in what you're actually reading. So, growing up, I was always given like a reading window, or I would just use like another piece of paper to help with my word tracking. I also have a lot of difficulty with sound association with read words. Um, again, as like the speech process, and um, I'll have a lot of difficulty of I can remember the word, but I don't remember how to pronunciate it. One time when I was little, I was trying to say the word tsunami, but I said Taisumi instead. And my brain could not find the word tsunami, and all I could come out with was Taisumi. And there was just nothing I could do to fish out the word tsunami until my parents figured out what I was trying to say. So, this is my bell curve that was given back to me when I was put through my neuropsych evaluation, which, if you've been through that process for your kid, for yourself, this is where they'll be able to diagnose a student with dyslexia or any other learning disability or anything under that category. Um, I'm not going to go into every point on here, but I do want to highlight these two specifically. These two, as you can see, are the furthest point from each other on this bell curve. So a lot of school counties will see these 2 points and see how far away from each other they are. And they'll just say, oh, okay, they're so far apart. We're just going to cancel them out, and your student is average. And this is called twice exceptional. And the county attempted this with me. And I'm grateful to have parents who said, mm-mm, no, that's not how it works. Yes, I could compensate for my shortcomings, um, but it doesn't mean that I'm just an average student. I still learn differently. It was still 4 hours of work in elementary school. It was still days of just struggling in classes to keep up with notes. It was days of feeling like there's something wrong with me. And if my parents just let the county say, she's just average and we're just going to apply twice exceptional, I do not believe I would be here where I am today. So this little girl, this is me from elementary school. This is around the time where I got diagnosed with dyslexia. And if I didn't go through the journey, the pain, the stress of growing up with my dyslexia, I don't believe I would accomplish any of this. So, in high school, I was a part of the National Honor Society, the National Science Honor Society, the National English Honor Society, the National ASL Honor Society member, and I was the president for the National Honor Society for American Sign Language at my high school. And I received an overall art recognition award for my graduating class of 2025. Also, I'm in the process of getting my EMT certification. I'm doing clinical rotations, and aspiring to be an emergency room doctor. My first year at James Madison University, I received a $2,000 biology department grant for studying isopods, the little creatures that you see in your backyard who roll up into a little ball. We're studying their gut biomes to see if we can um, get more synthetic materials to biodegrade faster. I was offered a teacher's assistant position for one of the biology labs my spring semester of freshman year. And I'm also aiding JMU's Office of Disability Services with their accommodation services and outreach programs for students. Also, with my dyslexia, I use it for my sports as well. I'm a two-time state Virginia champion. I'm ranked third in the world in the country for U21 Barebow Women's in 2026. And I'm also a part of the USA Archery Academic All-American group, which means I had to have a GPA of a 3.5 for my fall semester for 2025. And I honestly give all this credit to my dyslexia. Yes, I might have some peers who do similar things and they are neurotypical, but without my dyslexia, wouldn't have the drive I have today because I understand what it means to work hard and put in the time and put in the effort to reap my rewards. With that, I would love to share how I study and how I use my dyslexia to its full potential. So, first, I'm given a class document, maybe a study guide, maybe a textbook part, or a chapter, or a general document that I have to understand for class. And for me, that's a lot of words. I get overwhelmed with a lot of words with my dyslexia, and I get very tired with reading. It's physically exhausting almost for me to read because of how much energy my brain puts into reading. So, what I started doing is I take my documents and I actually upload it to AI and I tell the AI, can you please simplify this document? Do not add anything, do not subtract any information, but simply just reword it into bullet points and give some examples or give something for me to understand this topic um, in a simpler way, possibly. And from there, I will use those bullet points and simplified and response and create my notes. So the entire background of this slide are notes that I have used and actually have served me very well. The anatomy ones allowed me to pass the first part of my EMT training. The other notes are from my biology class that I took in college. Some other strategies that I have. My main one that I use is being able to teach the class materials. So, as you see here, this little gecko, he's mine. His name is Ergy, and I actually teach him my class materials that I have to learn. And he just either chills out on my shoulder, on my hand, and I'll teach him everything. And I think he actually enjoys learning because every time I go to my desk, I see his little face pop up looking at me and pacing back and forth at the door until I get him out and he just chills with me. I also like standing while I study. I realized if I'm sitting so too long, my brain actually does not want to listen. It gets bored. It's boring to just sit down for hours studying, and especially in college for finals week, midterms, it's a lot of studying. So standing for me works the best. And you can see Ergy's there with me, and I'll just I'll be working. I can move around a little bit. I usually have like some music in the background to keep me still engaged and actually enjoy what I'm doing and not make studying a punishment, but rather something I get to do. Um, another study strategy that I have been utilizing is using a whiteboard with a lot of colorful markers. For me, um, with liking standing up and studying, using a bigger whiteboard. I also have a smaller one too when I don't have access to like the school larger whiteboards, but I'll stand, have some music in the background, and use my colorful markers and fully map out my entire study plan. So if I'm learning, let's say, an evolution unit, I'll have it like flow onto the board. I'll have my thoughts kind of flow into each other. And I also have this thing called synesthesia where my brain relates words with colors. And I use that as well to my advantage. And so let's say one topic for me, like um, is the color blue in my head. I'll use a blue marker and I'll write the information I need to know about it, draw pictures in that color blue. So then when I get to my exam, I sit down and then I see that same word and it pops up blue in my head. Oh, okay, blue. And I'll remember the blue drawings that I did or the blue writing notes that I did because of my synesthesia. So for me, that is my biggest suggestion to utilize how your brain actually works rather than trying to make it conform to stereotypical study strategies. Also, in high school, I took AP Art, Advanced Placement Art, and my entire art portfolio was about my struggles with dyslexia and staying true to who I am and showcasing the internal struggles visually. So this first piece, um, it's one line, and they're all individually unique faces. And it's about how any person I've met who has a learning disability of some sorts, we can connect and almost understand each other's struggles because we went through something similar. And so that's why I call this piece We're All Connected Through Our Struggles. The next one that really showcases my personal struggle, why does it work this way? Every so often, it is hard to live with dyslexia. The world is not built for how our brains are functioning or how they are created. And there is a point in time where I had to learn to accept how my brain functions. And yes, some days are easier than others, and I still struggle with this. And I think it will be a lifelong struggle for me of why does my brain have to work this way when I have to put in 4 hours of work versus my classmates putting in only half an hour of work. And sometimes they do better, and it's frustrating, but sometimes it's an acceptance process. The next one is you never know who thinks differently. So in this drawing, this is probably roughly 2 feet by 3 feet. Um, I actually drew a picture of Albert Einstein right here, right up in this corner. And when you go outside, when you talk to people, you really don't know who has a learning disability or dyslexia specifically. You would never know that by talking to someone or seeing their accomplishments. Just because you have dyslexia doesn't mean you are different from everybody else. Yes, your brain is just wired a little differently, but doesn't mean that you can't accomplish the same goals. Um, this piece is also one that means a lot to me. Conforming to black and white but losing color. There's always a point in my life where I always feel like I have to change to either fit into education standards, to fit in with friends as well. Um, and with having to conform to neurotypical standards, I actually lost I would hide my creativity. I didn't want to show that I studied in certain ways or that my notes weren't like everybody else's, that I actually drew in my notes more than I actually wrote in them because for me, drawing and depicting the things I'm learning helps me understand stuff better. And when I first went to high school, I tried to hide my creativity and I tried to hide my dyslexia especially, but that only made my struggle worse. And I lost my creativity for that point until I had a teacher who offered me help, saying, "Hey, I recognize you're struggling and I see that you have accommodations. I I want to help you. Um, let me know what days that you can come in. Um, I want to ensure that you can do the best you can in this class." And from that day on, I realize it's not something I need to hide, but rather it's something that if I actually talk about it, it actually empowers me more and enables me to do better in my classes and not being scared to show someone, yeah, I draw my notebook. So what? This is just how my brain functions, has made a world of a difference for me. The next one, simple but complex. So this is a print carving out of a block of linoleum, and I wanted to depict how difficult a word might seem to a person who has dyslexia. And the word the specifically for me growing up was a very challenging word. My brain could just not retain it, and it felt like a huge task for me to remember the word the. And so I wanted to depict that a simple word can actually be very complex to someone who has dyslexia. The next one, I call it the wary student. There's a lot of anxiety when I raise my hand. Am I going to look stupid for pronouncing a word wrong? Am I going to look stupid for asking a teacher, "Hey, can you go back a slide? I missed what you said," because we write slower as I demonstrated with the dyslexia simulator. Um, and especially for me growing up, there was a lot of anxiety raising my hand to answer questions. There's also an anxiety of being called on to read something, and I would panic. If it was like an ordered of like, okay, Sophie, you're going eighth, I would practice my thing that I had to read over and over and over again until I could basically just read it out from memory. Because reading it cold for the first time, oh, it would be so difficult. And I just remember struggling reading, and I would get stuck on a word, and then someone would just be like, "It's that word. It's pronounced this way instead." And it just felt so humiliating and embarrassing. And there was even a time where I was in the middle of reading and my teacher just goes, "Okay, we're gonna go to the next person," halfway through while I was reading. And for me, that was almost like a slap in the face of, "Oh, okay, I'm taking too much time. I'm struggling." Okay. So, next one, mental to physical. So, I have anxiety because of my dyslexia. It was nerve-wracking to go through schooling with it. And I had a lot of physical symptoms as well. I had stomach issues. My hands shake in class. My heart races. My fingers get cold. I start sweating. Um, and with my synesthesia, I see anxiety as the color orange. And so I depicted that with the orange bubbles on the painting. And even though you can have a difference in how your brain works, doesn't mean that there's not going to be something else that usually goes along with it. Um, and that's another thing that I'm trying to be more open about is, yes, I have anxiety. And yes, I get more anxious about tests and studying than my peers because I have to put in a lot more work and remember certain terms in a different way. The next one, feeling trapped in creativity. Sometimes I felt like I was alone in how I would think of things or process things because it wasn't the stereotypical way of doing it. And it was sometimes isolating. And sometimes I wished that I would be like everybody else just to feel a sense of fitting in. But now I know that's not the case. Dyslexia has always been around. And it's true, it has always been around. Researchers actually studying famous people throughout history who they actually think had dyslexia. Leonardo da Vinci is one of the biggest cases. They actually believe that he was dyslexic because the way he wrote, the way he thought of things, and more of this evidence is coming out that these brilliant people are actually dyslexic. And we make it seem like this is like a new discovery, but it's not. We just have finally defined it and said that dyslexia is this. Another one, internally struggling and externally struggling. Again, I wanted to talk about and focus on the relationship between having struggles like dyslexia that are internal, but also having physical symptoms of that struggle as well. Another one, a lazy river of words. Um, if you remember back to my slide where I showed the processing of information, I depicted this in a visual way of almost letters are taking a little lazy river trip through your brain, and it almost feels like they're on vacation and not actually getting to the destination that they should be and being used as efficiently as they should. So, before I conclude, I want to share my Common App essay that I used for college. And I believe this sums up my experience when I started understanding with my dyslexia and the struggle. It's titled The Upside Down Home Depot Bucket. Yes, the title is weird, but it will make sense in a minute. In third grade, I remember walking past classrooms of kids reading, talking, and playing together. I watched from the hallway, being escorted to the school's basement. As this unfamiliar teacher walked me through the halls, we reached the furthest point from every classroom because why would the school want a disabled child on full display? Her keys rattled as she opened an unfamiliar door and led me in with a gesture of her hand. I quickly realized the mysterious room was simply the janitor's closet and a storage room. I remember the musty smell and dampness from the leaking pipes and wet mops. I also learned I was encroaching on a home of many spiders who took residency in the dreary, barely used closet space. After greeting my eight-legged friends, I found my seat upon an upside-down Home Depot bucket. It was a classic bright orange color with the lip at the bottom that made sitting on it very uncomfortable because of how it would dig into the back of my legs. My makeshift desk had only 3 legs, which made writing on it very difficult. My chaperone graciously helped me level it with old binders and sticky note pads she found. The room was quiet. I guess it fulfilled its purpose, probably both purposes. The one for me to have a smaller testing space, and the second for me to be kept hidden from the population of perfect students. I remember thinking they could have at least provided me with a functioning light bulb. The one bulb that dangled over my head was clearly about to die. I was my school's very own Jekyll and Hyde. The school loved my Jekyll side of me, who had perfect report cards full of straight A's. On paper, I was an ideal student. But my other side, they desperately tried to ignore, hide, or gaslight me into believing nothing was wrong. I know now I am no monster. I am not a rabid, beastly creature who resembles Mr. Hyde. I am simply dyslexic. Being dyslexic allowed my teachers to give up on me. Most days they left me in a corner to my own devices because I was a lost cause to them. I was incurable. Since they did not teach me, my parents became my first educators who poured endless hours at night to help me succeed. I felt mentally isolated from my friends because I struggled with things many, not even adults, could understand. I could not read or spell. Remember taking walks with my mother as she tried to help me spell simple words like the word the. 3 simple letters eluded my brain. T-H-E. How could anyone understand my struggle? Words danced and blurred on the page. Nearly every word was unrecognizable, like meeting the same person over and over again and never recognizing their face. How could someone understand reading? Something I love was physically exhausting, like running a marathon. I look back on my younger self, the scared little girl in the janitor's closet, wishing I could show her how I turned out a decade later. As years have passed, I have grown strong in my advocacy, confident in my abilities, and taking honors and AP classes that some once said were beyond my capabilities. In the past, I wanted to hide my disability, but now I see it has given me a beautiful, creative mindset and helping me approach challenges differently. I am proud to find myself in a cohort of brilliant, like minded dyslexics like Albert Einstein, Richard Branson, Agatha Christie, Winston Churchill, and many others. I've learned to love discussing my dyslexia because I see how much I have accomplished and how my disability has become my strength and badge of honor. I have earned grit and resilience because of it. Thank you all for listening to my story and taking the time to learn what dyslexia is. It really means so much to me. Thank you.
Well, Sophie, thank you so very much for sharing with all of us. I think everyone on this call would absolutely recognize the journey that you've had, the strides that you've made, and you are an amazing artist, truly an amazing and gifted artist. I don't know if anyone that's on the call this evening might have some questions that Sophie might be able to answer. Next week, when Maura is presenting with us, it'll be a little bit more on some classroom strategies for teachers, things like that. But if anyone has anything that they would like to ask Sophie and you want to write it in the chat or raise your hand and we can get you on with us. Again, thank you to everyone for being here. On behalf of the Porto Center for Learning and Leadership, we truly are thankful for your interest in this topic and everything that Porto tries to do within the Diocese of Arlington. And we thank you for the support that you give all of us. And we will see you next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Thank you all so very much.